For game 2 of Vinecutter, I was sadly matched against my mate Matt. I've easily played against Matt more than everyone else put together and tripled. And we've been specifically practicing this matchup for the preceding few months, so this was a bit of a blow. Matt had also won his first game, so it meant that one of us would be going home at best 2 from 3. I offered to decide the game with a coin toss or settle for a draw, but that wasn't why we'd driven 3 hours to the far side of Sydney. Having failed to secure the tactical information sought in the previous mission, the Coalition would now attempt a forceful raid on Dr. Heck's facility in order to confiscate his data and identify him from among his clones. The mission was looting and sabotaging, which I was immensely grateful for since we hadn't practiced our masking, because I knew I stood no chance in it due to my total lack of specialists. Conversely, this was Matt's Hassassin's list, which has 4 specialists, all of whom are in +1 burst fire teams. It was a no-brainer to take my total reaction bot list again. If you want to see a rundown of my list, have a look at the previous video. But Matt runs a Govad Engineer, Asawira Lieutenant, Bokhtar Harris, and a Gulam, Barid Hacker, Barid Killer Hacker, Heavy Rocket Launcher Moyib, and Yara Haddad Core, with a Fide and McMurrow as solo pieces, and some disposable skirmishers in the second group. McMurrow at least was a new addition for us, replacing his usual second Fide. Total immunity isn't much fun, so I think I prefer fighting against the Fide, especially since McMurrow tore apart my army single-handedly in our last practice game 2 days before the tournament. As usual, Matt won the Lieutenant roll-off and picked initiative, so I picked my side of the board since it had taller and denser terrain and a defensible AC2 objective with more lines of fire protecting it. Quite a handy thing to have, considering the objective is to destroy the enemy AC2 with melee attacks. The board had the quirk of having a monorail running through it along the centre, meaning that the panoplies were on it, with one being in the left train carriage. The monorail was vaultable by anything, though technically bikes were too short for it. Annoyingly, I drew the same classified as last game. Matt deployed McMurrow and his core fire team centrally near the objective, and his Harris to the left here. The Fire was reserve dropped over here, somewhere, and the Dailami were on the rooftops here and here. I deployed Scarface just out of shot behind the purple box with Cordelia over here, where I hoped that they'll be safe from the AP Spitfires and AP Marksman rifles I knew Matt had. The box was large enough to guts behind for total cover at least this time. The Doyokai Harris was here with Yojimbo, where they could cover the AC2 without exposing themselves too much. And the missile launcher Tanko stood up on top of this truck. And I scattered the Kaisotsu about as usual to protect my backline from Fides. My reserve drop was again the total reaction bot on this elevated roof above the stairs of this building. Matt began by losing McMurrow to an ARO. I can't remember whether it was the Tanko or the TR bot, but it certainly wasn't a great start. To make matters worse, the Moyib went face to face with the Tanko, but lost and died. Matt's next move, though, was more successful, eliminating the TR bot with Yara Haddad by shooting through smoke, before moving the core fire team onto and around the train platform. The only other thing he did was toss some repeaters in the direction of the fire day on my left flank over here somewhere, which didn't really bother me as most of my active pieces were on the right or had stealth. In my first turn, I moved Scarface around the side of the building and took a shot at Haddad. But first I triggered an arrow from this Dailami, and I won the face-to-face roll and killed him. Using the same orders, I tried to move Cordelia up the ladder onto the roof to get to the TR bot, but there was another Dailami over here, still in camo, so I couldn't shoot it. But if I popped Cordelia up, she'll take a Panzerfaust to the face. So I left her on the ladder and contented myself by killing a Burid with Scarface. Yara Haddad, I was able to take a shot on her, and this forced Matt to pop up his second Dailami to make me split my fire. And she did survive, though I shredded the Dailami. But unfortunately, now I didn't have the orders to get Cordelia up to the TR bot. So I had to leave that for another turn. I moved Yojimbo and my Harris forward, like this, planting the Daiokai and the Tanko in the two doorways, as you can see. And he also, the Diokai, slaughtered the other Berid from his position on the top of the platform in the train carriage. In Matt's turn 2, he fired at the Tanko and the Diokai, which put the Diokai into no wounding cap and forced him to guts away. He used his core fire team, I think it was mostly Yara Haddad. I don't remember much else happening this turn. I'm glad I just put so much defensive pressure on with the forward Harris and Scarface looming around the corner, because otherwise he might have thought about bringing his Fire Day and heavy infantry around through the left flank and attacking the AC2 from that direction. In my practice game of this mission, I realised that it was extremely difficult to damage the enemy AC2 whatsoever, because it was so far away and it's guaranteed to roll at least an 8. And therefore, this mission could come down to the smaller objectives, as completing my classified was basically out of the question. I started turn 2 by bringing on my Yuan and the ITS Corsair Bashi Bazook, and running them, Yojimbo, and the central Harris Digger to the Panoply and using it. After that, I did repair the TR bot with Cordelia, and then I moved her to the midfield so that she'd be in a better position to complete the classified in turn 3 if I managed to get rid of enough of Matt's stuff to make it feasible. At the very least, you could watch my AC2, which now had very little in close proximity to it. I didn't kill anything, but it seemed we'd reached a stalemate in the midfield, and I completed more Panoplies than Matt could ever hope to, so the ball was in his court. He finally brought his Boktar around, firing through this fire lane to kill Cordelia, and then killing the Diokai and the Tanko, though this left him without any orders to spare for completing objectives. I didn't think Matt had completed his classified, but if he had, then we were looking at a 2-all draw. With Cordelia dead and the Panoplies already won, the only thing for it was for me to throw everything at Matt's AC2. Yojimbo went first, using his own orders, but died through his smoke to Yara Haddad's MSV. The only model left with an anti-material weapon was Scarface. So despite the fact that there was a Jammer Ghazi next to the AC2, I charged him up the board, and the Jammer luckily missed his one attack that could have stopped Scarface, and he reached the objective with precisely one order and was successful in wounding it. It eventuated that Matt hadn't completed his classified, so I won 5-2. Another major victory. Just like in the last game, the TR bot did work. It prevented Matt from accessing the entire right-hand side of the board for most of the game. And other stars were Scarface for actually completing the objective, and the Diokai for taking so much midfield punishment to prevent Matt's advance onto my side of the table whatsoever. This time, my efforts were enough to help secure a coalition victory, and Dr. Heck's facility was razed to the ground, and his research either mulched or confiscated.